Welcome back to the Icarus Idea, your source of inspiration for all things on design. Today we'll be talking about a very special kind of organization, one that I actually didn't know about until very recently. And last episode I promised you that for this episode I wouldn't be alone anymore, so I have someone at my side. She's the newest recruit and she's already invaluable for our socials and our for the promotion and the social media. So a big welcome to Nikki.
Hello.
Hey Nikki, how are you doing? Excited to be here?
Good. Yeah, very excited. First time being here. So
great. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
it will be a fun episode.
Of course.
Would you please introduce our guest of today?
Of course. All right. So our guest today, he is a designer, researcher, and cheesemaker. After finishing his bachelor's in Rotterdam for interior architecture, he decided maybe he should take a bit of a break before his master's and became the co-founder and part of a brew association called Brouwvereniging. Then moving on to his master's in collaborative and industrial design, he decided to venture past the Netherlands to go to Finland and started to work on many projects there, including being a part of a grassroots organization called Toekomstboeren and a biochar project, teaching, and last but not least, being a cheesemaker. Now he's working as a designer with a passion in food and working on agroecology. So now, please give a round of applause for Will van Twuijver.
Woo! Hey Will, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Nice. Very glad you could make it.
Yes, thank you.
I met you in in a guest lecture actually that you gave for a course of mine. So that's how I got to know about what we will discuss today. So I guess we'll get right into the questions, right?
Yeah. Of course. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, you studied interior architecture in Rotterdam, but as well you told us before that you did an exchange in Baltimore. So we want to know what exactly came about with this exchange, why the exchange, also did the programs necessarily match? So give us your opinions on it.
Okay, I can do that. That's actually a very long time ago for me. I studied interior architecture at Willem de Koning Academy from 2008 to 2012, and then in 2010 we had as bachelor students we had the opportunity to go on exchange, and our university had a collaboration with a university in Baltimore called MICA, Maryland Institute College of Arts, and as a student at the time, I was with a classmate, and we both just wanted to go very far as possible, and not to a famous city. So we didn't want to go to New York or Sydney or Rio, but we were like, let's go to Baltimore.
What was exactly the reason that you wanted to go far away?
Because we had the chance.
Okay, yeah.
So because the university offered the opportunity to do these exchange programs, and we thought, well, we will always be able to go to Hungary or Germany or France, so why not go far away when we can? Yeah. So that's what we did, and then we stayed there for half a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow.
And what was like when you were there? You arrived in America. And then, what was the first thing you saw? Were you surprised? Were you scared? Were you?
Well, we were a little bit scared because we got our visas, student visas, but then we arrived at JFK Airport and in New York, and everything looks like you're in a movie. And we flew for maybe 7 hours, but then you still need to go through customs, so and it can be a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
So, the first thing. For us was just being able to make it through customs, and once we did that we were a bit more calm, and I think my first impression of the US was quite New York. We started in New York, and that it really felt like being a part of a movie, but then as soon as we traveled more south towards Baltimore, then you see a little bit other parts of the country that. Yeah, for example, we were quite naive, and then we took a bus to from Philadelphia to Jersey, and once we told people afterwards, like, oh, we just took a bus, and they were like, what, are you crazy? That's dangerous, or so yeah, like these kind of things we didn't know at the time.
Okay, but nothing happened.
No, nothing happened, but. Yeah, like I think like in the US everything is a bit more extreme compared to the Netherlands. So and I think that whole part was quite adventurous.
Yeah.
And what I also enjoyed a lot was that we were on exchange, but then for students in the US, they also come from the whole continent basically. So because the US is such a big country, that they also moved away 7 or 10 hours away from home, or even further. So everybody was a little bit like starting a new life, and you could really feel that energy, and that's something that I missed in the Netherlands as a student, where at least when I was a student, there weren't that many international students yet. So most people, they just came from the town nearby, and then they moved back to where they came from.
You mentioned that everything in America is a bit more extreme. Did you see that in the program itself as well, the education?
It was different. I think, like in the Netherlands, the program was very much content-based, I would say. So you would get a assignment, and you have like, for example, me wanting to become an interior architect, you learn about some building regulations, or like how to use Photoshop, or like very or like design courses. But then in the US it was much more open in a sense. They were just encouraging you to do things. So they were always very enthusiastic about ideas, even if they were not that well thought through. Then it was just go do it, and it's amazing, and so that I think that was the biggest difference.
I think you mentioned before that the level of education is a little bit lower in America. Did that leave some room to be a little bit more like adventurous, or explore some more areas around the study or within the study itself?
Well, like I guess it depends a bit on the program. So I think like at least the program I did at the time, I felt about that, but I don't know if it's like in general, if the level of education is lower in every university. So when I was studying at Willem de Koning, I'm at least the level suited me very well, and then in Baltimore, it was a bit different.
Did the exchange in America, was it similar to what you did here in the Netherlands, or did it connect well together, or was it something completely different, and was the one not very applicable for the other?
I mean, it was a bit different. I think it's also a very long time ago, but I think, of course, I think like the differences are in little things, also in the cultural differences. So I think, like, for example, if you would go on an exchange to China, you kind of anticipate things to be very different. And then, but then, because I went to the US, and you think you know everything because you've seen series and movies, but then, of course, like there's a lot of subtext that you kind of have to figure out while you're there. And I think like part of going on exchange, of course the program it has to be somewhat relevant to your studies, but the things you actually learn are more about having to deal with being far away from home, or being part of a new culture that you don't fully understand, and talking in English the whole time. I mean, now it's also more common in universities, but I did my bachelor's in Dutch. And I think those kind of things are the actual things you learn, and then that you bring home. And but of course the contents also is a bit different.
Well, talking about when you got home, after you finished your bachelor, you actually started a project with your friends, the Brouwvereniging in Rotterdam. And we were wondering, how did this idea come to be? Like, how did it start, and why did your friend group choose to do this?
I think those were two friends I got to know through Willem de Koning, my studies at Willem de Koning, and I think in general, my experience of being a student there was very hands-on. So there were a lot of other students who liked to make stuff, and we would hang out in the workshops, in the wood workshops or the metal workshops, and or I would get to know people from like them being active with small projects in the city. And this is also how I met these two friends. And then I think one day we were at a kitchen table just having some drinks, and one of them mentioned something about a friend wanting to start brewing beer and starting a brewery. And then my other friend, he was talking about production processes in how they influence design, and how it would be very interesting to kind of influence a production process instead of just making an object. And yeah, we just started ideating on that, and then at some point we decided to buy a starter kit, and we got more enthusiastic, and we got some other people involved, and just started experimenting, and like this grew over time too.
All right. So the idea originated like it came up very spontaneous.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, did you set some kind of goal for yourselves, or did you have something in mind? What was the goal that you wanted to work towards?
I think after a year of experimenting, and then we had this kind of subscription-based model where we had parents and friends order a 6-pack of beer every month, I think, and we could it financed our experimentation. And then later, I think about after a year, we decided, okay, this, or maybe it was 2 years, but then I think this was 2013, 2014, and also around the time where craft brewing became more popular in the Netherlands. So suddenly around us we saw other beer breweries popping up, and we didn't really want to compete with them, or we didn't really want to commercialize it too much. So we started looking for alternatives, and actually the thing we discovered, what we liked the most, was that there's a lot of online knowledge and online communities that allowed us to learn. So like also you get knowledge from home brewers in the US, but also local people. They invent something, they share it, and at least as a designer, I thought that aspect is way more interesting. Like, how do amateurs gather knowledge, and how do they share it, and and does it lead to something new? So I think like at the time, the three of us, we were more interested in this DIY communities and how they work, and we wanted to kind of contribute to that, or capture that knowledge in some way, rather than being one of many commercial beer brewers. And it would also take away a lot of freedom for us, I think, because then you just have to do production. And as we all came from art school, we don't like too many fixed, rigid schedules. So
now this was actually something that we were very curious about, right? Like, because you start this basically from nothing, maybe with no prior experience. So we were really wondering, like, where did you get your knowledge from, and how did you build the objects that you needed for this, the tools? Because I know you built a beer brewer. We were just thinking, how do you do that? Like, if you have no knowledge about it, how do you teach yourself stuff like this?
Well, I think my education in Willem de Koning really helped to gain this hands-on mentality, because there we also learned how to weld, or how to work with wood and metal, and just basically how to make stuff. So the three of us were already pretty okay with doing that. And then the first time we brewed beer, we started with this commercially bought kit that you can find online anywhere, And while we were using it, we were already thinking like, oh, actually, this is not that handy. Maybe we need a thing to automate something. Or
Mhm.
we made these crazy setups with water boilers and aquarium pumps and all sorts of
Wow.
sourced materials just to
Very creative solutions.
yeah, just like a lot of DIY tinkering.
Mhm.
And then later that like got streamlined a bit.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
but I think like in general, to start something you can always start on a very, very small scale. Like
Mhm.
I think a lot of the big complex industrial production processes, they're not, in essence, they're not that different from what you can do at home. It's just that they're streamlined to a certain extent, and there's they have to be very efficient, and they have to make a profit. So they become technically very advanced, and then it becomes complicated. You need a lot of engineers and to maintain everything. But the steps, they're usually processes that exist for a very long time, especially related to food.
I think that's one of the biggest problems, right? When you do this to make a profit and to compete with others, then you have to make sure that you're doing something better than the others, I suppose. But if you're just doing this, basically for yourself because you like it and you just want to develop yourself in that's I assume that maybe makes it a bit, easier is maybe not the right word, but it gives a bit more ease of mind maybe for you, for the three of you.
Yeah, I think like when we started it was just a hobby. I think it always stayed a bit of a hobby because we never financially depended on it. But when I compare it, for example, to other food practices, for example, small scale farmers who have a community supported agriculture farm, or food co-ops, there's also a lot of activities happening outside of the conventional economy, but then still, like for example, farmers who do farming full time, they still need to make an income out of it. So it's still something that you need to. It doesn't take away the need for circulating money, but it also allows for other values to be presented. And I think especially with food, it's important to, as a society, at least that's my opinion, we should step away from this idea that all food should be commercially produced and rather start thinking, okay, how can we make this that it's more like a human right, or something that is accessible to everybody, especially healthy food, and how can you get people involved in that and take ownership of that process.
Is this something you were also already thinking about back then, or is this something you developed in recent years?
We were thinking about it back then because we thought that we wanted to create a place where people could participate and make the beers that they wouldn't be able to make or buy in the shop.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I think like over the years, of course, like these concepts around it, they like I learned more about that, and so that my thoughts about it, they developed further. Yeah. But the essence, I think, was already there at the time.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. I think right now you're not really active there anymore, right?
No.
But it does still exist.
Yeah.
So people can go there, brew their beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, now you know, if you want to brew some beer, go to the Brouwvereniging in Rotterdam.
Yeah. And I remember there are also other brouwverenigingen or brewing associations around the country.
Yeah.
So like I think in general, if you are looking to make something, there's already other people doing it, and like that's also the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Like in general, I think like ideas are usually not original on their own. It's really how like also maybe originality is not the most important aspect, but if you want to do something, then like look in your immediate environment, who's already doing something, and find a way for yourself to fit in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, touching on that as well, you were talking about inspiration. So could you talk about some of the inspiration you got for the Brouwvereniging then? As in, you started it from scratch. So how did that exactly go with finding other inspo points?
Well, for me, the direct idea came from my friend who suggested to start a beer brewery, but then the idea of like the subscriptions, I got that from a short permaculture course that I did. Like it was just one evening, but the guy who gave the course, he mentioned that he had this vegetable box subscription model that he worked with, and at the time I never heard about anything like that, so that was a big eye-opener for me. And like we kind of took inspiration from that idea to make a beer subscription model, but I mean also he didn't invent that idea either. Like those things have been around also for 40 or 50 years, so there's nothing new in that sense.
No. Right.
All right. Well, now moving forward from the Brouwvereniging, you went on to your master's then, and you went into creative and industrial design, collaborative and industrial design for your master's, but also did a minor in creative sustainability and sustainable global technologies in Finland. Now, we wanted to ask, did the Brouwvereniging in some way inspire you to go abroad to Finland and, look into something else? Or was it just solely the fact that you wanted to venture to another country and you wanted to experience a different studying life over there?
It was a bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely had the wish to study abroad, but then I don't think it makes any sense to just go to a random place and do a random study. So I was looking for master programs that, of course, had to do something with design, and beforehand I already knew that Aalto University was a very interesting university. And then I saw their program called Collaborative Design, and that really resonated with me because of the experience with the Brouwvereniging.
Right.
And especially, like, for example, during my bachelor's, I learned a lot about how to make spaces and objects and work with materials. And I personally, I think like it doesn't really matter if you make a table or a chair or exhibition or beer or cheese. It's like it's all materials, and you can work with that. But then while doing the Brouwvereniging, I suddenly also had to work with people, and that was something completely new for me because I wasn't used to collaborating and it also required skills that I didn't have at the time. Maybe I'm still learning, but
never stop learning.
But definitely at the time I didn't have these skills to, like a person is, they can be moody, they have their own character, they have their own incentives and motives to do something. So how to foster that energy and be comfortable with it, that's something that I, especially in the beginning, struggled with. So once I heard about this master program in collaborative design, I thought, okay, this is like moving away from just creating objects to focusing on the processes. And
because if I remember correctly, that you mentioned that after your bachelor's and maybe while doing the Brouwvereniging, you weren't sure right from the start that you wanted to do a master's, right?
I maybe at some point I would like to do one, but right after graduation, I was also a bit arrogant. I don't know. I thought, I don't need one. I can do everything myself now. But of course, the world doesn't work like that. So I also had to learn that the hard way. But I think in general, it was good to take a bit of a break and have this experience to what it's like to work outside of the comfortable context of a university. Because as a student, at least at the time, I didn't really realize how much infrastructure is given to you and how many opportunities there are that you can make use of. And once you graduated, suddenly you're on your own. And like a lot of my friends, we all started renting these really cheap studio spaces, and everybody became a freelancer. This was also just right after the financial crisis, so there weren't that many jobs at the time. So everybody was kind of struggling for at least a couple years to figure things out, and then so I did that for 3 years, and then when I got accepted to do a master's, I was much more sure of, like, I knew, okay, when I'm going back into university life, there will be opportunities given to me that I didn't have in the past 3 years, so I'm going to make use out of it.
Mhm.
And I think I think that was very valuable, and also to take a bit of time to think, okay, what kind of masters do I actually want to do? Like, not just immediately stepping into the from one program to the next.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, one more question we wanted to ask you, in terms of studying in Finland. What were the differences like from Netherlands to Finland, as you know, it is a different country and has different cultures in its own. So did you experience any difficulties with that as well?
I mean, it was very different. I think I was kind of used to this way of teaching they had in Willem de Koning, where you work a lot on your own, and if you come up with a crazy idea, the teachers will really like it. And in Finland, and I kind of expected it to be like an extension of my bachelor's.
Right.
So like in Finland, or at least at Aalto University, what I struggled with at the beginning is that my bachelor's was in applied science university, so it's much more practical. And then Aalto University, it's like a university, so everything was much more academic.
Yeah.
Right.
So suddenly I had to write a lot of essays and learn academic structures and methodologies. And like, I think if you already did a bachelor's in a academic setting, then you already take 3 years to kind of get the grips, kind of get the basics. But then I had to catch up, and so that part was tough. And then also, like, the programs, they were much more interdisciplinary. So not only were there a lot of people from different countries, but also from different professional backgrounds. And I was kind of used to my art school bubble, where if you propose something crazy, people really love it. And I started proposing crazy things, and then nobody got it. Like, well, why we're doing this, and what's so I also had to change my my tone and like kind of navigate. Okay, what is it that I actually can do, and how do my skills fit in a team, and that's one part I really enjoyed in Finland, is that like there was only group work, and in the Netherlands, at least in the studies I did, there was hardly any group work, and like learning how to work in a team and getting things done, and also from a like a design and research perspective, that was very valuable. Like, I think all the students, they struggled with it in the beginning, but then at some point you get to know each other and how you work, and which approaches get some results and which don't, and then actually I think the things we did, they were really nice.
Okay. So next to your studies in Finland, you also worked on several projects and some jobs, and I think some teaching, right? So you were talking when we met before about this is you can combine these things very well in Finland. I think it's easier over there than it's here in the Netherlands. So how did that go?
Well, I got a research assistant job at some point, because like I was part of the program. So like a lot of the students there, they're looking for these kind of jobs, and then professors, they don't have them all the time, but they're definitely there. So,
and the system as it works in Finland, you have the masters is 120 EC, right? And then 60 of that, so half of it is set courses, but the other 60 is free. So you can fill that with these kinds of projects or whatever you want, right?
Yeah, they have a system. So like 30 credits was the final thesis. Then I think like 30 was the minor.
Okay.
And then you could choose your minor program. So it could also be from a different I think they were like 8 or 10 minors you could choose from as
Yeah.
a design student, and then there were like also maybe 20 or 30 credits that you had to take within your own program, and then there were 30 left that you could do whatever you want, and you could even go to another university in Finland, for example, or abroad, or so they had this special like registration portal that if you want to do a course in biology in Lapland, then go ahead. And in that sense, that part was much more free compared to what I was used to.
Exactly. So there's a lot of freedom over there.
Yeah.
How do you think that developed you as a designer in itself? Like, did that freedom maybe help you in some kind of way to develop yourself as a designer, or did it make it more difficult, or how did you experience that?
Well, it definitely helped a lot, because I kind of early on in the collaborative design program, I figured out that what the program was about wasn't fulfilling what I was really looking for, and then actually in these other minor programs, it was. So it was kind of easy to switch and to actually follow the courses that I really wanted to follow and that interested me. Yeah. And instead of just sticking to a program that wasn't where I didn't fully belong. And then also within that you can choose still. So if you want to take more theoretical courses or more like maybe creative courses, or then you can still, or within a certain theme, you can kind of follow your own interests.
Yeah. Very nice. And then in Finland, you built a lot of connections. And then when you were done with your masters, and you had been back in the Netherlands for some time, you actually returned to Finland for the biochar project.
Yeah.
So what is the biochar project? And why did this? Why was it for you? What interested you so much in this project?
Well, it actually happened a little bit by coincidence, because I moved back to Finland a little over a year ago, and then I happened to come across my former boss, and he said, well, actually, that's not completely true either. This is true, but so I used to have a job as a teaching assistant, and that was also already about biochar and about like identifying carbon capture spaces within an urban setting, and then mainly related to carbon that you can capture in the soil. So like, and then one of the methods is biochar, and that continued. That project continued after I graduated, and I wasn't a teaching or a research assistant anymore. And then I stumbled upon my former boss at this event, and he was like, "Oh, are you back in Finland?" And I'm still working on this project, and I'm actually looking for someone. And so that's how I joined again. Like, but then I still did that for a year. Yeah. And
No, exactly. But then, was the project finished when you left, or is it still an ongoing thing?
No, now it's finished. Yeah. But it was part of a network of cities that are working on the same topic. So in other cities, it's continuing, and then in like the funding ran out after that year, and then to like apply for new funding, then. It can take a while, so it could be that this project gets picked up in a year, or maybe not. Like that's hard to not for me to say.
Yeah, but is it a national project? So is it continued in other cities in Finland, or is it a global project?
No, it's global.
Global. Yeah. Okay. And maybe for the people that don't know exactly what biochar is used for, like what is the most important application of biochar?
So biochar is basically charcoal, and charcoal is a material that's very high in carbon, and the carbon is very stable and porous. So if you make charcoal, because it used to be organic matter, often in wood, but like it took CO2 out of the air to make these carbon structures, and then by making charcoal, you make it very stable. And then if you put it in the soil, you take carbon that was formerly in the air in the form of CO2 and you store it in the soil. So it's a way of capturing CO2. And because it's very porous, it acts a bit like a sponge. So you can, it can soak up water, it can soak up nutrients and slowly release them. And it has a really high surface area. So like a lot of microbes can live in it. And it can hold a lot of water and other things. So if you add this to the soil, it can also help to increase the resilience of the soil. And especially in urban areas, there's often a lot of stress for plants because they don't have that much space to grow their roots. So the projects that we did was we tried to create a local loop where an experiment with if biochar is produced from local waste streams, how can it be applied in the city, and then in what forms to make the city more climate adaptive, but also to have this circular system in motion. I mean, in principle it's very simple, but then I think all the challenges come from the variables that are in it. So there's within the municipality and the waste processing facilities, there's certain processes, so it needs to fit within there. There's certain regulations, there's certain ways and how green managers work, what cities plan in terms of climate adaptation. So all the details and all the troubles that come from implementing something, that's where the truly interesting stuff happens.
Was it a coincidence that Finland worked on this project, or is this something that Finland very much needs or wants?
I don't think it's specifically related to Finland, although there were quite some other people already involved with biochar. There was also a biochar research group at the Helsinki University, and some entrepreneurs trying to set up these biochar plants, because also they have a lot of forest industry and a lot of sawdust and waste being cut from there. So they were looking for ways on how to implement it. But I think in general, this technique, it can have its use in other cities as well. That's why they were also experimenting in other cities globally. But it will look different. Ideally, it will look differently everywhere, because I think also when you're looking for sustainable solutions, you really need to think very context specific. And I think one of the problems is, especially with the debate about climate change, is that we're trying to find a very easy solution in one way. It's we have too much CO2 in the air, how can we put it into or how can we mitigate that? But I think in general, the problem goes much deeper. It's not only about CO2, it's also about biodiversity, it's about landscape, it's about food, it's about our relationship to nature. And I don't think there are any silver bullets. So also with something like biochar, it's promising in some regards, but biochar alone is not going to get us out of trouble.
No. Okay.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. You were talking about it being a global project, so I wanted to know, were you able to develop connections with people around the globe then for this, or was it just mainly based on the group that you had in Finland?
I was mainly working within a small group, and then we had these meetings with the representatives from the other projects maybe twice, but we could see their reports and follow their projects, but we weren't that was happening on a different level.
Okay, all right. And were you able to see the differences between other countries and their cities and how they were trying to implement biochar and yours, or did you solely focus on the fact that it was in Finland?
No, I for the project I was also mainly trying to look at how citizens could participate. So this was something that all the cities tried, and that was very, very different from from each place, because the local cultures are so different. And I think like for example, I had to find these local gardening groups, and then they had to be interested, and also the growing season in Finland is very short, so there was only like a very limited amount of time that we could actually implement it. And then for example, in the beginning I was very much more interested in climate adaptation, and I had all these examples from the Netherlands, for example, where people can take out tiles from the street and then plant plants against their facade, and like there are these climate adaptation groups that are giving, there's much more possible in public in the Netherlands. And when I showed these kind of practices to the people in Finland, they were very shocked. Like, whoa, you in the Netherlands you can just like take out tiles from the street, and like
shocking.
Yeah, it's good. Like, are you allowed to do that? And like nobody would even dare. And so like they have a different culture there also, and a different relationship to the government. And you also need to really listen to what people are want. How do they operate there? What do they actually want? Otherwise, it's not gonna be used.
Yeah,
it's very much
all right. And then before we move on to the next topic, I have to bring this up. Before we started the interview, we were at the coffee machine, and then you were talking about some people using a very interesting tactic, I think, for the composting, or a very interesting project that they tried. I'm talking about the composting the underwear.
Okay. So like for this biochar project, I was looking at, or like working together with these gardening groups, and one thing that was, I think, quite interesting is that like a lot of gardeners, they don't really have all the necessary tools to measure everything, so they have to work with like observations. And one test that the gardeners did was that they would bury two pieces of underwear, and one in the area with biochar and one in the area without, and then just to see which one would decompose more quickly. So that's like. But I think that's also part of it was a global trend also at some point.
And which one won?
I don't even remember. Like I actually, for me, that part wasn't the most, like which one won or which one worked better wasn't the most interesting part. Like I'm more interested in like what motivates people, and how do they actually like what practices do they invent for themselves to build a relationship to soil, or
Okay.
All right.
Well, okay. Well, during your studies, you developed a fascination for grassroots organizations. So maybe for the listeners, could you give us a rundown of what exactly is a grassroots organization? What does it entail?
So grassroots organization is usually like a group of people, often citizens or people who are like somewhat active, and they try to facilitate a change from the bottom up. Often, and usually it's like a societal change, or some political change, or like often something to do with sustainability.
All right. So then, moving back from the brouwvereniging, did this also inspire you to get into the grassroots organization Toekomstboeren, or?
Yes, it did. Like I think I was always already kind of fascinated with these kind of things, like this DIY and a bit more like counterculture things, and squats and those kind of things. But I think for me, like while I was living in Finland, I got much more interested also in agriculture, and then I ended up volunteering for a farmer near Helsinki. And he had this also this subscription-based farm where people would subscribe for one season, and they would get these vegetables. Once I started being present on that farm and volunteering there and working there, I just noticed that there's a lot of similarities between this and farming and permaculture, and then from there on it kind of went down the rabbit hole, and I ended up with Toekomstboeren, which I think it's also quite a big leap from like where I started, where like looking like this type of subscription model based farms. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's so many more alternatives of people being co-owners in farms, and then like having the there's also a lot of politics happening around agriculture, of course, because there's a lot of subsidies going there, and there's like you have to do with access to land and access to food and like ways on how you can make socially just transition, and there's economics involved. So I think like it just started with a bit of gardening and helping to produce vegetables for people, but then like as I'm getting more involved, like all these political elements and things, they also kind of reveal themselves to me, and then I think that's also what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, because I think you said the societal aspect and the political aspect, that's really like a key point of like a grassroots organization, right? It has to have some kind of positive impact on society, so to say, to kind of classify as a grassroots organization.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think people can gather in all sorts of groups. Like you can also have a klaverjas club, like play cards club, and like, but I wouldn't classify that as a grassroots organization.
No, exactly.
So I think there needs to be this element of facilitating some sort of change.
Yeah, and right now you are actually in the board of Toekomstboeren. So what is your role in the development of Toekomstboeren at the moment?
So for Toekomstboeren, I'm a board member, but I'm also switching to become more of a coordinator of a project called Werkplaats Agroecologie, agroecology workshop, and that project is about like facilitating knowledge exchange between farmers. So having this horizontal knowledge exchange between farmers, and that can be around like farmers coming up with small like tools or inventions that they make and at their own farm, and that they somehow need a platform to share it. Or there's also a lot of innovative practices that farmers are currently experimenting with in the Netherlands. For example, one type of farming, it's called no-dig farming, and it's like a method where you try not to disturb the soil that much. And actually what's quite interesting about that method is that it's also something that became quite popular through YouTube. And then there's some influencers on YouTube, they start promoting this technique, and then it started living its own life. And then in the Netherlands also people try to copy it or work with it, because the method promises that it's a more resilient way of maintaining your soil, so it doesn't dry out that much, and like the nutrients are supposed to be kept better, and the vegetables are supposed to be like more resilient to drought or heavy rain. So like there are all these different small gardeners, market gardeners and farmers experimenting with this, and like the knowledge that they generate, how can you share it? And so that's one part that we're working on with Toekomstboeren, but then also like it applies all to tools. So if someone comes up with a clever invention on how to build a water pump or a weeding bed, or just like a skill that they developed and they want to share it, like how to weld, or how to fix a old tractor or something. Like there's a lot of solutions that they need to find, and because just of daily life, something breaks, something's aching your back, or you want to produce a bit more, and often this type of knowledge, it just stays on the farm. So like for Toekomstboeren, we're looking for a way, how can we amplify that knowledge and share it and make it more available to others, so these ideas can start bouncing off in a better way.
Because that's the thing, right? Grassroots innovations or organizations are usually very situational. They are directly in the environment that they are, and the situation that is in that environment, and that's what they're looking or trying to find solutions for.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, how is the making of the tools in the shed, in the workshop?
Mm-hmm.
How is that in practice, and how do you experience that? How can you maybe take us through? A person walks in, he or she says, "This is the problem. We have to find a solution for this." How does this go in practice?
Well, like we tried to turn it around. So like we're also still developing the method, but the idea is that farmers already often they already found a solution, or like not all of them, but like some of them did. So we try to give the specific farmers who already came up with an idea or they invented something a stage, so that their idea can get shared, rather than from the start already trying to design everything for them. But this is just maybe in a couple of years, when our network and our methodologies have proven themselves, hopefully, then it will also become easier to design maybe for like a specific problem. And this is already something that you see happening in other countries. So like last October, I met this farmer from this like tool building group in Canada, and they gathered a group of maybe 20 small scale farmers, and they all had the same problem where they needed to wash their carrots very efficiently, and they didn't have a good machine for it. So as a community of 20 farmers, they developed a prototype that worked, and then they all built the prototype, and that's how they are organizing themselves. So this is also a strategy, but at the moment we're trying to follow a different path with Toekomstboeren.
And you say that you want to prove your methodologies maybe in the future, but why? Who do you have to prove something, or why?
Well, we're coming up with like an idea that we think, this might work to get like to spread farmers' knowledge from one farmer to the other, or to a group. But then like that's something that starts in your head, and then you have to test it in real life to see if it actually works. So like to prove, I mean like that to check if it works. Like I don't need to prove it to my parents or to the prime minister or anyone. It's just like just for ourselves to see if this works or not. And I think also that's one part that I think with this type of projects is that like it's different from trying to create something that needs to be commercialized. So for example, if I want to design a new garden rake, and I want to sell it at the garden store, then like the type of steps I have to take are very different, and the objectives and incentives, they're very different. But in this case, like it's not so much about what gets designed, but it's much more about how do they want to get involved, what knowledge is valuable to them, how can we facilitate that, and what are people's needs actually. So and what talents do people have, and what skills, and how do they want to contribute, and that is I think the most specific the context specific part of it. So like just like with the biochar project, like the people in Finland, the gardeners in Helsinki very specifically, then they have their own needs and their own climate and their own culture, and there are certain like local champions who are doing a lot of work, and then other people, they're just like maybe a bit shy in the beginning, and it's the same in the Dutch farming environment, like, and especially within Toekomstboeren, like it's a very specific type of farmer that we're working with. So and I think ideologically they're like not that different maybe from agroecological farmers in Brazil or in Indonesia or Japan, but then like our situation and the knowledge we have available, and like a simple example, like in the Netherlands we have a website called Marktplaats, and it's very easy to find like cheap or almost free secondhand stuff, and chances of being able to find it within a 50-kilometer radius, they're very high.
Yeah.
And so like we have a very good infrastructure of finding and sourcing stuff, and also our country is very small. So like with Toekomstboeren now we have this idea of having some sort of mobile workshop where you can go from farm to farm and give workshops and talk about certain topics. But I think this works, or hopefully will work, because we're a small country with a really good road network, and we have a lot of farmers like that. Maybe they need to like travel for 1 hour and then they can visit each other. But like, for example, I was talking also to some people who have this tool making workshop in Greece, but they're in a remote rural area in the mountains. So like, you know, good luck traveling around with a mobile thing. Like it's not gonna work there.
This sounds cool. I imagine this could be like a graduation project of a student right here.
If a student wants to get involved, then we can see what we can do.
We'll connect them to you.
Yeah.
Now, I think through most subjects that we have talked about so far, it becomes very clear that you have a big interest for agriculture, green cities, and farmer rights. But where does this actually come from, this interest of yours?
I mean, I think I was already always interested in food and in cooking at home. And I think, like, for me, I think food is just a really good method to for people to connect, because everybody can relate to it, and it's something that we need on a daily basis. And there's a lot of cultural practices involved, and there's a lot of politics also involved in how it's produced. And then the sustainability side to it, it's on the one hand, it's just a necessity. Like, we need to find a way out of this mess that we're currently in. So I don't think there's any way of avoiding that. But then I also think it offers potential for actually, and this sounds a bit corny, but like actually making life nicer for everybody. And I think like that's also one of the things that like it's getting a bit less nowadays, but especially in the past, it like if you would talk about sustainability, it was always about like giving up something. Oh, you shouldn't fly as much, or you shouldn't eat meat that much, or like you can't go on holiday anymore. And I suppose that's also true if we want to cut down emissions. But I think the much more stronger narrative is, okay, actually we can also restore, like, you know, a degraded landscape, or you can actually like, you know, like grow food in a community, and then develop practices that are not as shallow as going to the supermarket and just buying Coke and chips. And so I think like working on trying to create these alternatives, I think that's what motivates me. And I'm like, I mean, I'm also just one person, and like these projects are not that big, so I don't expect them to change the world, or in that sense have like a gigantic impact. But I think just it's also like maybe something that needs to grow over time. Maybe it will take 50 years to get to a substantial point. Maybe it will take 200 years. Like, I have no idea, but I still think it's valuable to like participate in that process rather than go work for Unilever or like some sort of company that I think is not adding anything meaningful to our society.
Exactly. And every step counts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like before, I've given workshops regarding sustainability as well at another project in the university. And at the end of that workshop, we always had a quote from Jane Goodall, which is, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something.
Yeah, I guess.
So I think that really makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also if you want to participate in any like local food initiative, like it doesn't have to happen in, you know, like you don't have to turn your whole life around at once, but you can start very, very small with just, you know, like getting in touch with someone who produces something, and just have a conversation with them, like, and then from there on you can even, like, you don't even need to buy something, just
No.
like getting to know who's doing what. That's already a very good first step.
Definitely. Awareness is
Yeah.
key.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. All right. Well, talking more about food now. In Finland and over here in the Netherlands as well, you're a cheesemaker, making products such as fill, yogurt, butter, lactique. Now, I find this quite interesting. So where exactly did this come from, wanting to make cheese? You went from beer to now a product like cheese. That's quite interesting. So could you maybe tell us something about it?
Yeah, sure. So the cheese making came from like doing working on farms and doing also a course in biodynamic agriculture, and then the as part of the course I had to milk cows and take care of cows, and that was already quite new and fascinating to me. And then through that I ended up at a cheese making farm, and once I was in the cheese making space, I started doing it at home during Corona as well, with some roommates, like because I suddenly got all this milk from these farms, and we started doing an experiment at home. Like, my roommate came from Greece, and we wanted to make feta, and as soon as we were looking, okay, how can you actually do it? And I recognized like half of the equipment from the brewery, and it also had to do with fermentation and everything. So I immediately felt very comfortable. Like, this is probably not that like it is different, but not in principle. It's quite like you're from. So with cheese, you're also just like with beer. You're taking you're making a product that you can store, so by fermenting it. So in case of beer, like traditionally it was a way to make water drinkable,
right,
and also like to make it a bit nutritious with the grain. And with cheese you're making like milk, otherwise you can consume it fresh, but otherwise it will go to waste. So if you make yogurt or cheese out of it, you can leave it and then eat it half a year later. And so like these type of products, they're quite related.
Wow,
nice. Makes sense.
Well, quite interesting. You also mentioned in one of our previous conversations that you make cheese from the homelands of people. So how do you exactly approach this? Exactly, like taking in the culture of the person and how you exactly make the cheese from their homeland, because I imagine it, although it is cheese, it might be different from place to place, no?
So right now I have a small cheese workshop in Rotterdam, and it's part of a neighborhood group that is also looking or trying to do experiments on how the neighborhood can become more sustainable, and food is one part of it. So I'm doing a project there that's looking at, okay, what role does dairy have in a future food system, and how can people consume and produce dairy in an alternative way that's not based on commercialized dairy production.
Okay.
And in this neighborhood there are a lot of migrants, and they all have their stories from home, from like when they were a kid, for example, and they grew up on a farm, and they have a cheese that they produce at home, and not in the Netherlands. So for example, there are some Turkish women that wanted to make this Turkish type of cheese that I never heard of, and I don't even need to tell them anything. Like, I need to tell them how the space works, and how like we should keep it clean in the same way that we're all working. Like, so if another person comes in, that they know what to expect. But like they were making a type of cheese that I didn't even know how to make, and then like some of the women, they were just looking in the pot and be like, oh no, this we have to wait. We're like 2 more hours before we do something, and like I'm actually learning from them as well. So
wow.
Yeah.
And do you think you'd ever think of combining the different cheese making methods to make, I don't know, a new type of cheese?
Yeah, maybe. Like I think also if we want to advance like or change dairy production in the Netherlands. So, for example, now there I didn't count them, but there are way too many cows in the Netherlands for what the land can handle. So even if we would like think about okay, what does a sustainable farming system look like that would have these local food collectives where you would get your food, the amount of dairy produced and amount of milk produced would be way less than what it is now. So this would also mean that the economic model behind it wouldn't work anymore, and then the amount that we can produce and consume would also be drastically reduced. So in that sense, from that there on, a new like dairy culture will also emerge, and then I think like it only emerges from how people actually what their preferences are. So I can like I mean this is happening in the city all the time. Like I think the most famous dish from Rotterdam is a kapsalon, and it's a weird mix of Dutch cheese and shawarma and like some Turkish influence, and it's invented by I think it's a guy from Cabo Verde. And so it's like this eclectic dish that like it's very there's a lot of coincidences involved, and and I think like in 50 years we're also going to have a lot of food that and recipes for things that we can't think of now because just other things available.
We know from you that you like to combine a lot of projects at the same time, and we know it gives you fulfillment. But we were wondering, where does your motivation and your perseverance especially come from to do all these things at the same time?
Well, they're not all happening at the same time. Like, for example, the brouwvereniging, it's a very long time ago.
That's true.
And then toekomstboeren, that's like, so that's also the reason why I want to work part-time as have a fixed job as a teacher. So it gives me a bit of freedom to do different projects. And I'm like also a person that's not that good at focusing, so I need this diversity in my week. Otherwise I go a bit crazy, I think. But like other people, they want to have like just one thing that they do the whole week. If they would have to switch with me, then they will probably also go crazy because it's way too chaotic. Okay, and then taking into account everything that we've talked about so far, what fascinates you most about design in general? Well, for me, I think like design, and it's a certain way of being able to build and bring into existence things that weren't there before. And I also like always try, like when I design something, to think about how can it increase people's capabilities to act and or make things understandable or accessible, and but that's just like a personal motivation that I think is very relevant. But it like the thing I also think that's very nice about design is that it's very broad. So like the aspects that I like, you can completely ignore them and still call yourself a designer, and like do ethnography or make an app or build a car, and like just the fact that you can go all sorts of directions with it, that's what makes it very interesting for me. And personally what motivates me is that to kind of show like, hey, all these different things that you can do with it, you can actually also it's not magic, like and I think a lot of the processes that we created in our like in our lives that you see around it, they became very abstract. Like if you want to understand how this glass is produced, you need to go through so many steps, and you don't even know where it's coming from unless you studied it. Then you probably know, but it also takes you quite a while to get to understand that. And to somehow bring those abstract processes back to something that actually is relatable. I think that's for me what motivates me.
Okay.
Nice.
Wow. Well, as well, on terms of design, as you know, we are here on representing the study association for Dendis. So do you have any advice for the students of our industrial design engineering course here, or any of the students at the UT as well?
Well, yeah, I don't fully know what type of courses you get, but I think, like, for me, when I was a student, and like the university was a bit different than the university that you're in, probably, but like just to be able to actually make something physical, that really helped to understand, like don't sit behind your computer all the time, but actually go into workshops if you have them here, and do stuff, or like even like you guys, you're making a podcast, and you know, by actually doing it, you learn so many things. You know, you learn how to interview a person, or how like a audio setup works, how to you know, invite someone and prepare, and and you know, things will go wrong, but like by actually doing it, you develop the skills, and I think like, yeah, as a student, you're in a very often, I assume, very safe environment to actually experiment and try these things. So, yeah, make use out of it.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, Will, about that sometimes not everything goes as planned, right, in life, and then people have to be able to let loose of the master plan.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I mean, yeah, that's just part of life in general. That things don't go 9 out of 10 times. They don't go how you imagine them. Like, even if you have an idea of an image in your mind and you try to draw it, it already looks different from what the image you had in your head probably, and then that's just like one little thing. You know, there's so many factors out there that you can't influence. So yeah, that you kind of have to be flexible and do things on the fly often.
Definitely.
All right.
Well,
Will, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We learned a lot today. Grassroots innovations, Finland, cheesemaking, beer making.
Yeah.
No, so if is there a certain place where people could get in contact with you if they want to discuss some things for the future?
Yeah, they can have a look at my website, willvantwuijver.nl.
Yeah.
And then you can, you'll also find my email address there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, very nice.
Right.
Okay, guys, I hope you were inspired today. And we also hope that you are looking forward to the next episode. So we'll see then. And if you have any questions or comments, then go to our Instagram page. We're on Instagram. The episodes will be on YouTube and on Spotify. So if you want to get in contact with us, at the Icarus Idea on Instagram, and you can get in contact. So see you next time, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.